it out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 579th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Tom is not going to be in today. He said he would like to be in, but his computer is not working. And I am, of course, wondering whether he's going to be back at all at this point, which I'm very sad about. However, the material that I'm going to be talking about is taken from my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go there, click on the date, which I will provide for the story, so you can read the story. There's about 15 stories normally for each date, and you'll find the story among them. What I call a script, which is basically just an outline with synopses, is also available in two ways that below for people who are seeing this on a computer. You can scroll down, and one URL is a web address for a site that has the show's information. It has the photographs, it has the links to the original articles. The other one is just a text file that is made up from that. So we're starting today on the 20th of June. Just to be accurate about this, I would normally have recorded this on the 27th of June, but I'm recording it on the 2nd of July because the 27th of June was not an available the studio was not open. So we're starting with Thursday, the 20th of June, and we have a picture of an offshore wind hub. This is from Clean Technica. The title is One City, Two Offshore Wind Hubs, 9,000 megawatts, and 9,000 megawatts is 9 gigawatts. And as Tom always says, a gigawatt is a bigawatt. New York City's boroughs of Brooklyn and Staten Island are both set to host hubs for offshore wind farms. Both claim to be among the largest in the United States. They are further evidence that the United States offshore wind industry is back on its feet despite interference of the fossil fuels industry and other setbacks. The other setbacks, by the way, include supply chain problems and inflation, which resulted in bids that they had done previous to the start of installation being impossible to achieve. So the offshore wind industry contracts were canceled when they were impossible, and the bidding was started over. Okay, our next item is more about offshore wind. It is from an organization called Renews, which I use frequently. Probably almost every show that is done has something from Renews in it. In this case, we're looking at a manufacturing site for wind float foundations. And I want to explain what's in here. If you look at what you're seeing there is basically I think it's probably a dock, although it might be a wharf. It's a place where ships can come up and push these things that are being built out to sea or tow them out to sea. What you see there, the triangles that are kind of sticking into the sea, are triangular foundations for wind turbines. And each one in the far corner from this picture has a wind turbine, which in each case is completely built. And then you can see the various sites where the wind turbine foundations can be begun on land. And these wind turbines are floating, and they can be taken out to places out at sea where they can be anchored and kept in place. And then, you know, this is a floating wind farm. The title is Principal Power Inc.'s South Korean MOU. Principal Power signed an agreement with the shipyard HSG Sangdong to advance serial manufacturing of floating wind foundations in South Korea. The non-exclusive MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, that's where the initials come from, outlines cooperation by companies on engineering developments for mass production of float wind technology. Once you've got these things under construction, you can probably put them up at a rate of 1 a day, 2 a day, you know, it depends upon how much effort they're going to put into it. But offshore wind systems can be put up with 1 turbine going up every day once you've got the wind hubs, which were mentioned in the previous article, operating. So this is now I've done it. I have done it. This is sorry about that. I pushed the wrong button and wound up having to go to a tiny button, but I think I can continue. This is a very fast way of putting up offshore wind turbines. So let's go ahead. Hope nobody minds. Our next article comes from Clean Technica. We have a picture of a super yacht. And the article says, super yachts for the super rich cause a whole lot of environmental damage. Many of the super rich crave the unparalleled luxury that super yachts offer. While they may gratify their appetites for such floating homes, they don't often pay much attention to the greenhouse gas emissions that they create as they do. And it is really kind of remarkable how much there is in the way of greenhouse gases that are emitted, not just from the yachts, but by the support systems that these yachts are involved in. And this is a lavish lifestyle, and actually any lavish lifestyle can produce a great deal of environmental damage. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in our country who take the view that if you have got the money to spend, you should be allowed to spend it any way you want. And from my point of view, if you have the money to spend, that doesn't mean that you are allowed to destroy things just because you have a lot of money. This is a world in which we all must live, and our children must live. So it's really not acceptable to do the damage that a super yacht might do. Believe me, I'd love to have a super yacht, but I would also hate to have a super yacht because it's not an acceptable thing to do. Okay, our next picture is a picture of solar systems in Ireland that are put together based on tiles on the roof. These tiles are basically roofing tiles. They're shingles, if you will, that are capable of producing electricity. And this is from a publication called News Talk. The title is Domestic Solar Power Output Up 80% in a year, in 1 year. Electricity generated from domestic rooftops in Ireland is up 80% in a single year, a new report has found. According to the current scale of solar report, solar energy could power 280,000 homes this year. This is in Ireland, by the way. Overall solar power output, including energy from commercial solar farms, went up by 43%. So this is a major input, a major increase in the production of electricity from solar powers in Ireland. And it makes me think of when I was in college and my friends and I would sit around and talk about the possibilities for what to do when we started to run out of oil. And one of the things was we knew that solar power was going to be providing a lot of electricity along with wind power. And we did not envision the probability that Ireland would have its solar farms, but it does. We envisioned a possibility that solar power could be developed to the point where it would be possible to build solar farms in places like Ireland. We knew that that was going to happen after the probability came into being for places like New England. Okay, we have a weird picture here. This is a graph of the temperatures, average temperatures for years. This is from earth.org. The title is What the Warning Stripes Tell Us About Climate Change. The vertical stripes that you see there are the warming stripes. Created by climate scientist Ed Hawkins. The warming stripes are visual representations of annual or monthly temperature anomalies. I think this might be monthly. For a specific location or region over the past 100+ years. The visualization uses a color scale to represent anomalies of temperatures. So the blue means that you're below the average, the red means that you're above. Being on the cusp between the two, you're going to be white. And as you can see, at some point in the not so distant past, the uptick of temperatures began, and it is increasing probably faster than it was in the past. This is an alarming situation that is not what we want. The evidence for climate change is very clear. And the evidence is really kind of overwhelming. So that's where we are. Our next item comes from Clean Technica. And the picture is just a picture of plastic. Plastic items, forks, knives, cups, containers of various kinds. And the title for this is Pyrolysis is the latest climate-killing plastic scam from ExxonMobil. Fossil fuel companies are touting a new way to deal with plastic waste called pyrolysis. Pyrolysis just means they're going to burn it. And to hear the industry spin it, it is the greatest thing since ice cream. It is nothing short of a flim-flam, obviously this is an opinion piece, the point of which is to keep profits high for fossil fuel companies. Fossil fuel companies recognized a couple of years ago at least that they in the not very distant future, they're going to be unable to sell fuel at the rate that they have been. The fuel supplies are going down. And in fact, the ability of the coal industry to fall apart has become really evident. The coal has fallen to a point where the electricity being produced by coal is much below what the amount is from renewable energy sources. And on top of everything else, as the coal fleet is shut down in the United States, the capacity factor for coal is declining in average, which means that the plants that remain are losing more and more money. So the impetus to shut them down is becoming stronger. So I don't know how long coal is going to last in this country, but it's not going to be very long. And oil and gas are going to do the same kind of thing. So several years ago, the oil and gas companies started to look at manufacturing the chemicals that are needed for making plastics as a way to sell their products of oil and gas. Problem is, when you've got the plastics, what do you do with them? You can't just throw them into a river and let them drift out to sea. That's what's been happening, and now we've got areas of the ocean that are covered with plastics. So they're suggesting pyrolysis, and that means you burn it. And we're back to what do you do with the emissions? The author of this particular article is asking the question, and I think that's justifiable. So we'll go on to the next issue here. Here is a map of the United States, and the specific thing that's dark blue here is the PJM service territory, which is all of Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, I think Pennsylvania, certainly New Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware. There are a couple of lighter dots in Pennsylvania. I don't know if that represents an area that is not served. And then bits of Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, a little tiny bit of Ohio, and the area around Chicago. This is the PJM service area. This article comes from Clean Technica. The title is Coal Capacity Factor Drops from 55% to 35% in 10 years in the PJM service area. Use of the coal fleet in PJM, the largest U.S. wholesale electricity market, has fallen over the last decade, driven largely by higher relative fuel costs. Since 2013, the PJM operators have retired about 34 gigawatts of coal capacity and switched about 2 gigawatts of coal capacity to other sources. Specifically, that means usually natural gas. But the capacity factor has fallen. I mentioned this as we were looking at the last article. The capacity factor has fallen as the use of coal as the plants were closed down, and that means that the remaining plants, some plants were closed down, the remaining plants are less efficient and more likely to be losing money. The coal industry is strapped at this point. So let's go on. The next picture we have is a picture from GoSun, and it shows a car cover that generates solar electricity. This is from NBC Los Angeles. Driving on sunshine. Car cover charges EVs with solar power. Solar company GoSun has rolled out a foldable car cover that harnesses the power of the sun to add miles of range for EV drivers. The solar cover, which can charge EVs with electricity generated by the sun, is said to be able to provide about 30 miles of energy. So what they're saying basically is that if you put one of these covers on a car and leave it there for a day, you're going to get enough electricity possibly to drive the car for 30 miles. I don't know if that's going to work or not in terms of its saleability on the market. I kind of have the suspicion that most people will find it more convenient just to plug the car in. But it may be that there will be people who find this a useful thing. If you can drive 30 miles, there's probably a charging station not very far from you. So that's something to bear in mind. The next picture is a picture of the city of Manila in the Philippines. And this is an article from the Japan Times. The title is Philippines Emerges as Southeast Asia Renewable Power Pace Setter. The Philippines has leapfrogged its Southeast Asia neighbors to become a regional leader in the clean power projects as fewer investment restrictions and green-minded policies attract investment. Changes have helped secure a pipeline of 99 gigawatts of wind and solar developments. Again, what Tom used to say is gigawatts is bigawatts. This is one of the things that's important about this particular article is that it shows that a country that is behind everybody else can suddenly be ahead of everybody else. This is basically what the Philippines did. It's not all that sudden. This has been building up for the last few years, but certainly it shows how possible it is to install huge amounts of renewable energy generating capacity quickly. And the thing that's holding us back in that respect is really, I think, more a lack of imagination than anything else. The people in the United States who write about what's holding us back very often tell us it's transmission lines, and if you have distributed electricity sources, you don't need those transmission lines. So the thing that is holding back renewable energy in New Hampshire or places like that, the things that are holding it back are really, I think, just understanding the nature of renewable energy and the sources of distributed electricity. Distributed means the sources of electricity are distributed around the countryside. The rooftop solar, with batteries especially, is distributed electricity. Parking lots, school rooftops, community solar farms, which are not very big and can be ground mounted. Agrivoltaic, solar power on farms, things of that nature. We are up to Sunday, June 23rd, and we have an article here from the Kyiv Post, and we have a picture of Kyiv. Put it up. This is a picture of Kyiv. Ukraine rushes for solar panels as Russia hits its power grid. The Russians, in their war on Ukraine, have been trying to destroy the Ukrainian power grid in order to make sure that nobody had electricity. Various reasons for doing that from a military point of view. The synopsis says waves of devastating Russian drone and missile attacks against crippled Ukrainian power plants, causing blackouts and forcing Ukrainians to plan for the worst. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that all hospitals and schools in Ukraine must be equipped with solar panels as soon as possible. Basically, what they're doing is they're looking for a way to have the solar energy distributed, as I was just saying, distributed. They want to make it distributed and have it available all over the country. So people, as they improve the situation that they've got, and they install more and more solar power, it's going to be harder and harder for the Russians to work on their electricity sources, because they'll be all over the place. And that's a response to the Russians attacking their power plants and their transmission lines. Power plants and transmission lines are what I would call an old paradigm. The new paradigm is distributed solar power, possibly wind power, batteries, and in as many places as you can possibly get it. If you think about this, if half the people in New England were living in a situation where they had microgrids and could untie themselves from the grid, it would make the entire area more resilient and less likely to suffer power outages. Okay, we have an article from Scientific American and a picture of Reykjavik, which is a place where everybody is colorful, I guess. The article here says Iceland's ice is melting so fast it's boosting hydropower. Iceland gets more than 70% of its electricity from hydropower fed by glacial meltwaters. So as the Earth heats up and glaciers melt faster, hydroelectric plants have more water to spin turbines and power the grid. It's a silver lining for a country mourning the decline of its glaciers. The problem in Iceland is the glaciers are melting. They're getting smaller. This is not something that is going to go on forever. Sooner or later, they'll be completely melted, and then Iceland is going to have problems getting a supply of water for its hydro plants. But in the meantime, it has been, on various occasions, looking into the question of whether it could build a subsea electric transmission system that would send power to Scotland, for example, or Ireland. And Iceland is one of the countries that has very nearly 100% of its energy coming from electricity. And they are trying to have, and have been working for years on having all of their fishing boats, for example, run on electricity. They want all their cars to run on electricity. How close they are to that, I don't know. But they are one of the countries in Europe, if you count them as being in Europe, where the electricity is close to 100% generated by renewables. Okay, our next item comes from 95 MNC, and it is, here's a picture of a solar array. The title is Conservationists Tout Indiana Old Mines, Brown Fields to Develop Renewable Energy. In a report called Mine the Sun, the Nature Conservancy says the quickest way for Indiana to gain energy independence is to utilize unused sites. I hate the word utilize. It's just, in this particular case though, it's correct because they are making use of something by changing it. Utilize unused sites such as abandoned mines, brownfields, or dump sites to develop solar and wind farms. And that's what you're seeing there. The idea here is there's a bunch of different things. Abandoned mines are a good place to put solar power, sometimes wind power. Brownfields are also good. Solar dump sites are a little bit more difficult because the ground in dump sites shifts easily, because it's not made solid. I remember meeting a person who worked at a dump site, and she told me that one of the things that happened frequently was that tires would appear coming up out of the ground, and she wondered why that was. But many kinds of sites are really good for using for renewable energy sites, and among them, and also batteries. Among them are nuclear power plants sites. When the nuclear sites shut down, the electric lines that go to the power plant are still there. And those electric lines can be used to bring power in to charge batteries and to take power from the batteries and put it on the grid. They're already there, and that's a big expense. It's already been covered with investment. So it makes sense to use old nuclear power plants, old coal burning power plants, old gas burning power plants, any kind of place where there's a power plant, use it for the production of power. We are up to Monday, June 24th, and we have a picture of sheep grazing at a solar site. I imagine these actually are in Oregon, I'm sure. This is from Clean Technica. Sheep and solar, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. Well, we've seen sheep and solar a bunch of times in Vermont, but let me read the synopsis. It's quite appealing to think that agrivoltaics could meet 20% of the U.S. electric generation with less than 1% of our farmland. Of course, vegetation must be managed to maintain electricity production. This is increasingly done with sheep. Combining sheep and solar has multiple benefits for farmers. There are other ways of doing this, and one of those ways is to combine solar panels with various kinds of crops. The sheep are pretty good though, because when you put solar panels out in a grassy area, the grass will grow tall enough to shade the panels, which is not good. But if you put sheep in there, they will eat the grass to reduce the amount of grass that is ever going to shade the solar panels basically to nothing. And that is a pretty good approach to managing a solar farm. Okay, we have a picture here of wind turbines in Australia. Let me put that up where you can see it. PV Magazine International is a source for this. The title is Australian Capacity Tender Flooded by 40 Gigawatts of Renewable Energy Projects. Renewable Energy Minister Chris Bowen said that over 40 gigawatts of renewable energy projects were registered in the first National Capacity Investment Scheme tender, which aims to increase dispatchable renewable energy for Australia's clean energy transition. Australia is working very hard right now on trying to get the country transition to renewable energy, and the opposition to the current government is trying very hard to stop that. And the way they want to stop it is by building nuclear power plants. People seem to think that nuclear power plants are more reliable than renewable energy. If you're going to put up just solar without batteries or wind without batteries, the nuclear plants will probably be more reliable. Now, the nuclear plants have to shut down for refueling, and that's done in the United States basically every 18 months. If they build nuclear plants in Australia, which doesn't have any yet, they could build plants that require refueling every 2 years. But the renewable energy, if it's combined with batteries, is actually as reliable. Let me put it this way. NextEra Energy, which is the largest utility in the United States, has come up with a term. I think they were the source. They might not have been, but they were the people I heard it from. The term near firm. And they talk about near firm solar and near firm wind. And the way they define near firm is that it is firmed up by batteries, by adding batteries to solar generation or wind generation, to the point that the power plant is at least as reliable as nuclear plants for providing dispatchable electricity during peak demand periods. Their engineers can do this. They know how much battery to add. And what that does is it means that the electricity from nuclear power plants really is not as good as electricity from solar or wind that have been made near firm. The solar and wind power, they don't need to be shut down for refueling, and the nuclear plants do. Basically, the opposition is saying we need nuclear plants, and the nuclear plants are so expensive that you can translate that into we need to rely on our fossil fuels a good deal longer so we can get the nuclear plants built. Okay. Our next item is from ABC News. And here we have a picture of a hot day. That looks like the name of the person who took the picture is Arab. I would imagine that might be a hot day in an Arab-speaking country. But I could be wrong. You know, he could be taking a picture in England and seeing the color and so forth come out the way that he has it. The title of this article is Bill Nye Says Record-Breaking Extreme Heat, quote, a waste of the normal of the future, a taste of the normal of the future, sorry. After a week of record-breaking heat in the United States, science educator Bill Nye told This Week being the name of a show, co-author Martha Raddatz, that the extreme weather is, quote, a taste of the new normal, end quote. Heat and floods have been amplified by climate change caused by human activity. This is Bill Nye basically saying climate change is happening, and it's happening because of human activity. And, you know, I've been reading recently on how they know this. There are a number of different ways that scientists know that it's human activity that's causing climate change. I don't know how many people are saying that climate change isn't happening. I'm sure there are some, but the last 10 years were the hottest 10 years in history. That is to say, each of the last 10 years was one of the hottest 10 years in history. Every single one of those 10 years was hotter than any year that happened before they came along. In the last 12 months, every month had global average temperatures were higher than they had ever been for that month before. Every single one of the last 12 months. We are on an upturn in temperatures. I don't see how anybody could deny reasonably, rationally, that climate change is happening. So how do we know that it's caused by human beings? The scientists have ways of figuring this out. I've read, and it's really striking when you think it through logically. It's the only solution that I can think of for what has happened. It happens that one of the ways is to take a look at the portion of the atmosphere that is made up of the proportions of carbon-12, the most common carbon isotope, and carbon-13. Carbon-12 is about 99% of all carbon in the atmosphere. Carbon-13 is about 1%. There is also carbon-14, but as I understand it, that's like a 1 in a trillion level among carbon atoms. Plants prefer to use carbon-12. So as plants die and fall to the bottom of a lake or whatever and eventually make coal or oil or whatever, that coal or oil is going to have a higher proportion of carbon-12 than the atmosphere does from which the carbon-12 has been consumed. So you can tell by looking at these fossils. Coal is a fossil, oil is a fossil. You can tell by looking at them that they have a higher proportion of carbon-12. The proportion of carbon-12 in the atmosphere has been going up as we consume by burning the carbon-12 in the fossil fuels. And we can see that in the modern record. So we can see how much of the atmospheric carbon that we've got comes from fossil fuels. And we know the increase in atmospheric carbon, and we can see that it's tied to the increase in temperatures. So these are just things that are happening, and they are a scientific thing that shows that climate change is happening as a result of human activity. There are other things that scientists are doing also to examine the same problem, coming up with the same results. Anyway, we are up to the 25th of June, which is Tuesday, and we have a picture here of a silicon perovskite solar cell that a person is taking out or putting into some sort of apparatus. The article comes from Clean Technica. The title is Rooftop Ready Perovskite Solar Cells Are Coming to the Residential Market. Oxford PV, a spin-off based on Oxford University perovskite solar cell research, has been working on a tandem silicon perovskite solar cell. It reported that its new residential side solar module achieved an unprecedented solar conversion efficiency of 26.9%. So what they're saying is, if you get electricity from these silicon perovskite solar cells, it's going to do a 26.9% conversion. That sounds like a low efficiency, but efficiencies in the world of energy tend to be very low. And by the way, one thing that I always bear in mind when I'm dealing with the question of efficiency, I tell people, efficiency, you don't know what efficiency means unless you know what it means. And the example I used for that was a discussion that I had once with a nuclear engineer. I asked him how efficient his plant was. The plant was Vermont Yankee. And he said, oh, it's about 35% efficient, but that's normal for thermal plants. There's a maximum efficiency that they can have that is not very far from that. And I said, no, I think it's more like 2/3 of 1%. And he laughed and said, how do you figure that? And I said, well, you're getting 35% efficiency out of your fuel, but you're only using 2% of the fuel, because that's as much as you can use before you have to replace it. And he kind of shook his head yes and said, well, if that's how you want to measure efficiency, that's what it is. So what does efficiency mean? It means something, but you have to know how it's measured, what it means. In this particular case, 26.9% of the energy hitting the solar panel is being turned into electricity. A good solar cell that's on the market today might be 21%. So this is actually a pretty good rate. And you can't really compare this to a wind power plant or a coal plant or something like that. It's not comparing apples with apples. It's more like comparing apples with baseballs. It's just a different thing altogether. But the big issue here is perovskite solar cells are super inexpensive. And what they've discovered is that you can combine them with silicon, which are relatively expensive, and come up with a really efficient solar cell, the solar panel. And that is good news. Now, where it's going to go, I don't know. Maybe it'll fizzle out. I just don't know. But we will find out in time. Okay, the next item that we have comes from Fleet World. And the picture that we have is a picture of EVs charging in England. And the title is UK First Trial Shows Dynamic EV Charging Pricing Can Help Manage Renewable Energy. Okay, what does that mean? An EV charging cycle by UK Power Networks, Octopus Energy, and EV Energy. That EV Energy is EV period energy. That's the name of something. Is proving consumers hold the key to balancing energy supply and demand across the country. Already underway, the trial involves more than 1,500 electric vehicles to help manage demand. And that is a big trial. They're charging ahead with it and learning as much as they can. We'll see where that goes. Okay, our next item, we have a picture this is a picture of a wind farm, the Rail Splitter Wind Farm. This is from MSN. The title is, "The Fastest Growing Career in the United States is in Wind Power. Here's what employees make, what it's like, and how to land a job." Federal data indicates wind turbine technician is the fastest growing, let me put that up so that people can see it. Sorry about that. Fastest growing job in the United States. While the absolute number of new jobs isn't that big, it represents a projected 45% increase between 2022 and 2032. So it happens that a new wind turbine technician can expect to make a fair amount of money. And you can, that amount of money is going to grow as you get experience. But the question, of course, is how do you get that job? And if you go to MSN, the link that is provided at my blog, let me look again and see what the date is. Yeah, this is Tuesday, June 25th. If you go to Tuesday, June 25th at geoharvey.com, you can find this article and find out what it says. The jobs are there, they're real. The job demand is increasing and is expected to continue to increase. Young people looking for a job can very often find them in this place. And there you have it. Okay, the next thing that we have, the picture is a picture of the Block Island Wind Farm. Let me get that up. There we go. The picture is a picture of the Block Island Wind Farm, and the article comes from North American Wind Power. The title is, "Vineyard Wind 130 megawatts now grid connected. I don't know if I said this is Wednesday, June 26th. It is. The synopsis says Electric Utility Avangrid Inc. and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners say 10 turbines at the Vineyard Wind 1 offshore project are now delivering 130 megawatts of power to the Massachusetts grid. If you think about that, that means that the average of these wind turbines is 13.6 megawatts each. That's a lot of electricity. When the project is completed, it will be able to provide up to 806 megawatts. 806 megawatts is, well, when it's operating at full potential, it's basically a nuclear power plant bigger than the one at Vermont Yankee. It won't operate at full potential most of the time because it's wind power and wind increases or decreases. But if you put that into a battery, which should be done onshore, you could make this into a near firm, maybe 500 megawatt source of electricity that would be in Massachusetts. This is pretty good, actually. So we'll go to the next item, which comes from Renews. I think I said that an article earlier was from Renews, and I have Renews articles on this show possibly every week. That is a Siemens Gamesa turbine, and it is, as I understand it, the turbine that we're talking about here. The title here is Siemens Gamesa secures type certification for 15 megawatt turbine. Siemens Gamesa it's a company that was created in a merger by Siemens and Gamesa. Siemens being a German company, Gamesa being a Spanish company. Siemens Gamesa has been awarded type certification for its 15 megawatt wind turbine. The manufacturer achieved first power from the 15 megawatt offshore wind prototype at the Ørsterild site in Denmark in March of 2023. Since then, the turbine has undergone thorough testing. Now, a 15 megawatt wind turbine is, at the time that I saw this, I thought it was the biggest turbine that had been developed, and this is only a few days ago, but I think it might have been today, it might have been yesterday. I saw that an 18 megawatt wind turbine had been put up in China, and you know, that is a pretty powerful wind turbine. Okay, we are up to our final article of the week, and this is a picture of a Hyundai EV. The article is from Clean Technica. California could provide up to $14,000 in incentives for low-income EV buyers. That's the title. The California Air Resources Board unveiled a driving clean assistance program that offers major incentives to people who purchase or lease new or used clean vehicle and meet certain home guidelines. The incentives can total as much as $12,000. So this is a $12,000 is a lot of incentive. And this is an incentive specifically for people with low incomes. The incentives that have happened for drivers up to date, most have come from the federal government. The federal government has offered up to $7,000, but it's a tax reduction. So in order to have that, you have to owe $7,000 in federal taxes. And poor people don't generally do that. So it's been hard for poor people to get the help that they would need to do a tax incentive of any kind, really. Okay, before we go, I want to mention the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, has basically told us that if he's elected, he's going to undo everything he can of renewable energy, everything that was done by Joe Biden, everything that was done by Barack Obama. He's going to try to undo it. He's going to try to stop the offshore wind farms from being built. He's going to try to do everything he can to increase the output of the oil industry and the gas industry. And for all I know, the coal industry, although the coal industry suffered really badly while he was president. And I don't know how he can support natural gas, which is a competitor for coal, and coal at the same time. The coal industry fell apart during the Trump presidency, I think, because he was pushing natural gas so hard. The Supreme Court has basically said he can do no wrong, in the sense that anything he does is immune from prosecution. And I have written letters, emailed to one, an article with a letter to another. The first to Green Energy Times, which I write for, the second to Clean Technica, which I write for, saying these organizations have to get political. If they're going to be pushing renewable energy, if they're going to be pushing a climate agenda to end climate change, they have to make sure that Donald Trump is not president of the United States and able to undo renewable energy plans. Also, he plans to undo the initiatives in the United States for environmental protection, for health, and so forth. So we've got a serious agenda in front of us, and we're going to have to be political. We can't be non-political and stop climate change. If we're going to stop climate change, then we're going to have to start by stopping Donald Trump. I'm sorry to put it that way. I don't like being political, but I don't see the alternative. So there you have it. And the final word here is have a magically happy week. So there you have it. And I always say Tom Fennell's cat is undoubtedly waving his tail. I am waving goodbye. Come back next time. And have a good week. Magically happy. Bye-bye.